Okay, the time is now 2:05. I think it is safe to start. So yeah, I'll let Terry take it away.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Terry, and I'd like to welcome you all to Progressive Labor Party's Black and Red Celebration. Today, we will highlight the contributions that Black communists have made in the life and death struggles against racism, sexism, and imperialist war. Their drive, their courage, and determination to destroy the capitalist system, whence all these isms come, should not go unnoticed in chapters of the working class history. Their success, their failures have guided our knowledge, our practice, and sharpened our line. PLP's fight is one directly for communism, no in between. We fight for a world led by the working class because we know how society should be run and we are capable of running it. We know that the ruling class will not give up their power. We will, we, the working class, must take it from them. We have and will continue to fight for the freedom of our class sisters and brothers here in the United States and internationally. One world, one class, one party. To find out more about our fight, find us on social media at our website, plp.org, and see our Linktree page and YouTube videos. Read Challenge Desafio newspaper. Join challenge readers groups, study groups, and last but not least, join the Progressive Labor Party. We have a world to win. Okay. This afternoon's program will be in English and in Spanish translation. You got all the points to make, how to transfer over to the English and Spanish. So, and we'll bring some of those up again, the procedures throughout the presentation. There will be 4 presentations of historical significance in Black workers' struggle to fight for communist ideas. Our first is about the Communist Party's struggle to free 9 young Black teenagers in the 30s in the South who were accused of raping 2 white women. The mothers of these young men made a pivotal decision to allow the Communist Party to build a campaign to fight for their freedom. This original reading is presented in the perspective of the Black mothers that led the struggle for their sons then and now at the hands of racist police terror.
Some of us did not die. Some of you, of us, remain, despite that hatred, that violence, that murder, that suicide. And what shall we do now, we who did not die? How shall we grieve and cry out loud and face down despair? June Jordan.
The American Communist Party and another party, but they both joined in 1920. And it's a small organization. But once Lenin gives the edict that it is the job of American communists to work for national liberation, the American Communist Party then dedicates itself to this cause and targeting, in particular, African Americans, who they seem as a especially oppressed population. So they recruit Blacks and they move them quickly up the ladder into the Communist Party. And the Communist Party attract support from African Americans. But what helps the American Communist Party is sensational events, and one of them being the Scottsboro case. in 1931, where 9 young men ranging from the ages 14 to 21 were arrested and accused of raping 2 white women on the train. They were part of this great mass of humanity riding the rails, going from town to town looking for jobs. So once they are arrested and they're accused of rape, they are quickly tried in Scottsboro, and all except for the youngest one are sentenced to death. While the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People hemmed and hawed over, is this the right case for us, the American Communist Party wasted no time in running to the defense of Scottsboro young men, hiring an attorney to defend them, and attempting to try the case in the international public opinion, the court of public opinion, as well as in the courtroom. And in the long run, they managed to save the lives of these young men.
Baby boy, my darling boy, how can I carry the weight of you when it is so heavy to wade through this water that birthed the both of us, that had me who had you? The way the story goes, you want to work to take care of us. The scraps I earn aren't enough, and so you go, riding the railings, hungry and thin. You are glowing, laughing, fighting for something better, for something past hunger, past scraps, past all that kept you from being just a kid. I bet you were too light. I knew you were only wanting what you could, but even that was too much. And then your weight is no longer just mine, and grief is heavier than hunger. Hay and wood burn, heart alight, and this flame, a voice of reason, of something past aching, of something smoldering instead. It says, why would I beg your chains to loosen when I could burn the hands that tied it? A red flame, a same enemy. A new world awaits us. We gotta fight for it. And we do. Rejoice in the idea of revolution. And brought to the international stage, there's something too familiar in the working women who care for their children and siblings and community, just like we, just like you, knowing that we deserve more, not to be at the mercy of this world, but burning it. And my baby boy, they remind me, an ocean could not smother you.
Our next presentation is going to be about a young woman from Trinidad who her family moved to the United States, immigrated from there, and she was looking to get involved in the movement at a young age of 21. She was trying to find out how to get involved in the Scottsboro case. And that's when she ran up against the Communist Party and she joined. This person is Claudia Jones. She became a communist activist, a feminist, a Black nationalist, adopting the name Jones as a self-protected disinformation. Due to the persecution of communists in the US, she was deported in 1955 and subsequently lived in the United Kingdom. She founded Britain's first major Black newspaper, West Indian Gazette, in 1958. Now we should hear about. The next skit imagines what Claudia Jones may have said in the current struggle and situation that's going on now and in the nation around returning back to school in this period of COVID. So
Are you a member of the Communist Party? Question is, have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?
How can you decide to mete out justice for the only act to which I proudly plead guilty? That of being a member and officer of the Communist Party of the United States. In the 9.5 months of this trial, millions of children have been born. Will the future of those children be made more secure by the jailing of 13 men and women communists whose crimes are not criminal acts, but advocacy of ideas? Is this not a tyrannical violation of the American dream of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? Experiences which are shared by millions of native-born Negroes. The bitter indignity and humiliation of second-class citizenship. It was out of my Jim Crow experiences as a young Negro woman, experiences likewise born of working-class poverty, that led me to join the Young Communist League and to choose at the age of 18 the philosophy of my life, the science of Marxist-Leninism.
What is important to recognize now, it's not so much they're feeling directed against the act as such, because they're responsible, the act is law, they're fighting to repeal it, but the consequences of the act, namely the fact that the population at large, because of the whole propaganda against the West Indians, regard them as second-class citizens, and they themselves, on the job, in virtually every sphere of life, find this difficult since the Immigration Act in terms of discrimination, color bar housing, etc., etc.
I am confident that we can and will win this round against the ruling circles who seek to bring fascism at home and atomic war abroad.
We too stand to prevent any more Hiroshimas and Nagasaki's. But the best way to manifest international solidarity is not merely by sympathy, but by all-out efforts to support total banning of nuclear war.
I think Claudia herself was the first one to admit that she was merely a part of the struggle, and she was a very powerful part in raising it to a higher level.
Breaking news. Teacher, parents, and staff would struggle to halt unsafe return to in-person schooling. We have Max on the scene. Max, can you tell us what's going on at the school?
Lucia, the scene out here is truly breathtaking. The crowd is electrifying. Students, parents, teachers, and staff are celebrating for a safer return to in-person schooling. I'd like to make it clear that the people here are not celebrating a continuation of e-learning. They seem to agree that e-learning is no replacement for in-person learning. However, they are concerned for the safety of their family, friends, and community members. Wait, I think that's Claudia Jones. Claudia! PLP News, can we get your thoughts on the situation?
I'd love to. The people need to hear this. Give me the mic. This is where it starts. Fighting in the struggle for workers' rights, working with workers side by side against the boss's lies, misleaders trying to lead us down a path that keeps us bleeding. But we know better than to believe what liberal bosses are feeding. Making things better for our class under capitalism is a lie they used to keep us maintaining the system. We need to expose the weakness in reforms. People will keep dying, starving, working to weather the storm. Regardless of a safe or unsafe return, students will continue to burn. Capitalist schools maintain the systems of victims, tracking and sending our kids into prisons. The garbage liberal bosses are feeding us is misleading us, keeping us from causing a ruckus, from organizing, unifying for the purpose of being treasonous. Nothing's going to change until we bring this racist, profit-driven system down. We need to organize, build a base, crack down for the showdown. Capitalists try to cripple our kids before they even had a chance, delivering curriculum, designating their caste, disempowering, brainwashing our kids to fight against their own class, yielding compliance of violence against workers en masse. They pretend to care about academic achievement, but didn't care when teachers and students were in the building, facing daily aggrievement, purposefully denying students of color equal opportunity and resources. Capitalist education isn't meant to educate, it's meant to incapacitate, placate, and designate. We'll never get what we need from the bosses. We need to push these conversations, build a concentration, organize workers for class struggle to take over the nation. Sending teachers, students, and staff into unsafe buildings will kill the poor Black and brown community. It's racist, capitalist murder. Teachers under capitalism fulfill a vital role, allowing bosses to exploit women to build their bankroll. This pandemic has forced women out of the workforce, caring for their kids, e-learning, doing the schoolwork, previously getting paid less than a man for every hour that we did work. This pandemic has really lifted the veil, exposing how much money the bosses are losing when they can't exploit females. Make no mistake, the bosses don't care about our students' education. They want teachers back in the buildings to keep exploiting women and hiding the flaws, showcasing public education is failing us all. The decision by the bosses to send teachers and students into unsafe buildings is driven by profit fixation. We need to fight for a worker-led teacher-student-parent collaboration. These villainous decisions to jeopardize millions of women will end up killing poor Black and brown children. They know this. It's racist, classist murder. Parents and students need the services provided by schools with impunity. Forcing them to choose between the needs of their children, livelihood, and community is outrageously violent, causing disunity. We must urge importunity. Fighting for unity is our only opportunity. We need to organize, politicize, revolutionize parents, teachers, students, and community. We need to take the power from the bosses, make decisions for ourselves through working class unity. Always remember we are in this struggle together. Destroying capitalism and everything it comes with. Racism, sexism, mass murder, class murder, subjugating, decimating students' lives, turning them into martyrs, doing everything in their power to keep our students down, but our kids, parents, working class brothers and sisters will never back down. These kids are the future, they are strong, they are powerful. Educating and empowering them under capitalism isn't allowable. We need to show our students how to fight against these racist, sexist pigs, defiantly fighting for each other's lives and our kids. We will use the power that the bosses will do everything to stop, working together, breaking barriers nonstop, because they are afraid of us, as they should be, terrified of working class unity, till one day when we rise, throw our fists in the skies, celebrate the destruction of capitalism, realize, bringing an end to the tyranny. Are you hearing me? This is where it starts. They're scared, they're terrified as they should be. Just you wait till we raise our fists, unified. This is just the beginning. We know you're terrified. Fight for communism. Claudia Jones, out.
Well, there you have it, Lucia. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thank you, Max. Keep up the good work. Well, there you have it, folks. Join the revolution, fight for communism, join Progressive Labor Party.
Sorry, I'm off mute. Thank you, Claudia. Progressive Labor Party's struggle and commitment to build a party with young people is so important because we know their strength, their vigor, their energy with our patience and our stick to itness will help to make this communist revolution happen. But youth have got to be in the forefront and with us, walking alongside of us, fighting to change the society that so desperately needs to be changed. Our next guest is Margaret Stevens, and she's going to talk to us. Margaret has been a dynamic activist and an author. She has been in and continues to be committed to fight for justice. In 2017, she wrote the historically impactful book, Red International and Black Caribbean Communists in New York City, Mexico, and the West Indies, 1919 to 1939. Margaret Talks will be followed by a Q&A. And thank you, Margaret. We're excited to have you here today with us. You're on.
Hey, so we're just waiting for Margaret to hop on, and then we'll add her. But yeah, if you guys have any questions that you just want to drop in the Q&A right now, just about like what we've already seen, any questions for Terry, who's been doing this for so long, we can definitely answer those until we get Margaret on the call.
Progressive Labor Party has always been at the forefront. I know when the first time that I was confronted and found out about the party is when I was interested in the Scottsboro case too, and I read the book, and I knew nothing about communism at the time. But it was only until I started working at Northwestern University that I met the party and communists in person. I never met a communist before. And after they talked about the line of fighting racism and why racism was important and that the system is the cause of racism, I thought it was a moral issue for a long time, but it was only until I met communists and they fought to get more Black and brown students in the med and dental programs at Northwestern that I realized that it is structural, it is part of the system, and that only by building a movement, only by joining and fighting against these ideas will we destroy racism and sexism. And so that was my experience with the party. It took me a little while to shed my nationalist ideas and individualist ideas, but I haven't turned around or looked back ever since after joining this amazing party. And it has influenced my family, my friends, and we're building an army and we need more people to join it.
So that was great, amazing. I want to say that first, but we are going to go to the next video, just so we're good on time. And then if Margaret pops on, we'll just pick up the conversation from there. And then you guys can continue to send in your questions and we'll answer them either when Margaret comes on or at the very end. So
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, our next presentation is on a communist named Hosea Hudson. Hosea was born in the South. He was a sharecropper. He was born 1898 to 1988. He joined the Communist Party in his involvement as a sharecropper. And then he became a steel worker. He worked in the mills. And then he was very instrumental in organizing the CIO. All of his life, Hosea committed himself to communism. He was a lifelong communist, and he was involved in lifelong struggles in order to change the situation for workers, sharecroppers, and steel workers.
This dramatization is taken from Nell Painter's collaborative oral autobiography, told to her by Hosea Hudson. Hosea was committed to the Communist Party. He stuck to his gut feeling about this even though he lost his house, his job, his relationship with his brother, and his wife losing her job due to his involvement with the Communist Party. His family was concerned. His brother and his brother's wife came to visit him from Atlanta to convince him to quit the party. He wasn't hearing it.
My position? Well, it was freedom for me. And in the party, I would be bettering my condition by helping get the conditions better for other people. And I wasn't the onlyest one suffering. I was suffering like all of the rest. Everybody else was unemployed. I had learned enough to know that the working class had their own problems. But we all going to solve our problems together and struggle. I stuck with that argument. I stuck to the party.
During the end of 1932 to 1933, Hosea worked in Eastlake, Birmingham, reconstructing the park. It was a segregated city park for white folks. He worked alongside a fellow Black Party member, and soon they started recruiting other Black workers to join the party. The party was growing. They started having classes, reading the Communist Party newspaper, Liberator, and discussing their rights and what roles comrades would play in organizing a government. The paper would give them hope.
The roles of communists. Negro communists? Well, it was to try to educate the people against setting up another system like the one we didn't already have. The question for some folks, education. And education don't just come from books. It comes from struggle. And while they're struggling to get a world that they deserve, they also learn through struggle of not separating. We didn't have a guarantee, but it was our job to try and convince them. We couldn't make people communists. It wasn't a question of making people. It was a question of being able to educate them to a point where the people themselves would take the correct path. It wasn't a question of force. The question of the right to self-determination was the final goal. But all these economic questions we were struggling with every day, the right to vote, against lynching, police brutality, the right of poor rural workers, Negroes, to sell their products. Well, that was immediate.
On July 4th, 1933, Hosea went to his first party convention in New York City. He drove with other fellow party members from Birmingham. It took them 3 days to get there.
I found this party a party of the working class. It gave me rights equal with all others, regardless of color, sex, age, or educational standards. I, with all my uneducation, could express myself without being made fun of by others who could read well and fast and use all them big words. I was treated with high respect. I had a right to make policy. At every convention, after a thorough discussion, decisions are arrived at by a majority vote. Then all members, including those that disagree, are bound by duty to explain, fight for, and carry out such decisions. When a decision is made, everybody has to fall in line.
In the early 1930s, the Depression hit workers everywhere hard. In Birmingham, Hosea Hudson was part of the Communist Party's organizing efforts, as he tells it.
Now, in 1932 and 33, we had began to organize these unemployed block committees in the various communities in Birmingham, and we did it in a big way. We had this network of leadership among the unemployed folks. We was able to meet among ourselves in a party and discuss the problems and plan out our tactical approach using a Marxist and a Leninist understanding. on how to go out and try to figure how to bring people together. We were some busybodies. We didn't wait for people to come to us to get their grocery orders or get their cold order from welfare. We would go around and see what the conditions was. Some people wouldn't want us to do nothing, but people who were cooperating with us, we help them. We'd get the neighbors rounded up and try to have a little meeting on this. Not a whole lot of big people.
At the meeting, they'd hear the person's story and involve the neighbors in suggesting solutions. For example, a committee might go to the welfare office to argue for food. Then they would call a meeting to report on what happened. At that meeting, they would promote the Neighborhood Unemployment Committee. Those committees help people fight for food, coal, and a place to live. One time, the committee met with a landlord who wanted to foreclose on a worker's house.
Now, we talked around there and said, now we know he pays his note when he's working, but everybody's unemployed now. We talked there to their real estate agent, and I says, the question of all this is, if you foreclose them, you know what's going to happen. This house going to get burned up, and we have no guarantee of stopping it. You just only will have this land. Finally, the railroad commenced to putting people back to work, and he went back to work. And he stayed in that house until he died. Oh, yes, he did.
Hosea Hudson was a freedom fighter. He fought racism along with his comrades in the Communist Party. He helped organize unions and was a part of the fight for equality among Black workers in Alabama and elsewhere. Today, we face similar struggles. As members of the Communist Progressive Labor Party, we will continue to persevere in our fight for an egalitarian world. As Hosea Hudson would say, there's freedom in it for all of us.
Thank you. I just want to let you know we have gotten all your questions and we will get to them after our last and final presentation. Thank you for your questions. Our last presentation is on Melvin Tolson. Tolson was an impactful teacher. He was a poet, a communist who was influenced by the Harlem Renaissance. Appointed by the country of Libya as a poet laureate in 1947. Tolson went on to celebrate for writing in opposition of World War II, political corruption, and the lives of Black people in America. He also was the impetus of the movie The Great Debaters that had Denzel Washington in it. My God. And so the next short piece is by comrades and friends in Los Angeles on the life and the work of Melvin Tolson.
A trailblazer, making way for these lines like cannon fire of class warfare. So we pay tribute like a toll and recognition of Melvin Tolson's contribution to the anti-racist and anti-capitalist struggle. In the trenches of Jim Crow South, transforming students and sharecroppers into visionaries for social change, like cannon fodder into revolutionaries. Indelibly written and soul-stirring in the literary canon of communist poetry.
He would write, "My poetry is of the proletariat, by the proletariat, and for the bourgeoisie." Jesus, Mozart, Shakespeare, Descartes, Lemon, Claudia have lodged with me.
Melvin Tolson was born into a poor family, son of a Methodist preacher in Moberly, Missouri in 1898. He earned money for college by working in a meat packing plant in Kansas City and also as a waiter in Atlantic City hotels. During the 1930s, while he organized multiracial farm laborers and tenant farmers, he was also a professor at Wiley College in Marshall, Texas. He advocated a class analysis of racism, stating that the cause of racism was capitalism, the profits of which required an exploited low-wage class.
One poem says, "How many times does a southern town waste white genius to keep blacks down? How many times do a Führer's claws dig up dry bones of the gray lost cause? How many times does an ermine class throw scraps of hate to the starved white mass?"
Even though in the 1940s he received some awards and notoriety for his poetry and is considered one of the new poets of the 40s of the Harlem Renaissance, he will remain living in the South. He would stay at Wiley College nearly 25 years, where as a debate coach, he developed a system that led to a 10-year winning streak, including a national championship over USC, which was popularized in the movie The Great Debaters, directed and starred in by Denzel Washington. He would then move on to Langston University in Oklahoma for 17 more years.
While there's a dearth of information on the specifics of Tolson's organizing of sharecroppers, there are plenty of reportings of his risking his life, evading multiple lynching attempts, as both an organizer of sharecroppers, but also in traveling throughout the South with his debate team. In a piece titled "A Southern Vanguard, The Lost History of Communism Below the Mason-Dixon Line" by Robert Greene II, published in The Nation on June 1st, 2020. These communists risked nearly everything, and they did so knowing full well that their ideals might never be realized in their lifetimes. But they nonetheless persisted, whether trying to save someone from lynching or struggling to organize workers. For nearly all of them, a matter of life or death, the nation.
In response to sharecropping, slavery by another name, he wrote, "They tell us to forget. The Bill of Rights is burned. 300 years we slaved and suffer yet. Though flesh and bone rebel, they tell us to forget."
He also recognized the poles of notoriety, the contradiction of being the voice of and for the working class, but also his desires to have his work recognized by the canon of capitalist literature. He wrote, "Here was the eyesight proof that the color line as well as the party line splits an author's identity." He would write, "But no one escapes their race, their milieu, their class, their moment in history. Great art does not repeat itself, but like history, obeys the Heraclitean law of change."
He would also recognize that one of the most oppressive challenges to the Black artist was the Black bourgeoisie. Poor Boy Blue, the great white world, and the Black bourgeoisie. He shoved the Negro artist into the white and non-white dichotomy. The Afro-American dilemma in the arts, the dialectic of to be or not to be a Negro.
While he was undoubtedly a great poet, unlike his friends, fellow communists, and writers like Langston Hughes, Ralph Ellison, and Richard Wright, Tolson did not write for a living. Instead, he taught a full load of college courses for more than 40 years, put in long hours as a debate coach and drama teacher. He was married and together raised 3 children. Then at night, he organized secret meetings with sharecroppers in East Texas and Arkansas. He was even a small-town mayor for a short time. It was only after these life commitments to building working-class power that he composed poetry after midnight in his basement.
Tolson wrote, "The poet, a champion of the people versus kings, his only martyrdom is poetry. A hater of the hierarchy of things, freedom's need is his necessity."
Langston Hughes said, "Melvin Tolson is no highbrow. Kids from the cotton fields like him. Cowpunchers understand him. It is not just English he teaches, but character and manhood and womanhood and love and courage and pride."
Not surprisingly, it wouldn't be until after his death that his works would really be recognized and published. A Tolson scholar would say the poem Harlem Gallery was likely to be the most representative American poem of the 20th century. Nevertheless, Tolson will remain in the South and grounded among students and workers.
He wrote Dark Symphony while a professor and debate coach at Wiley College in 1938. Out of the abysses of illiteracy, through the labyrinths of lies, across wastelands of disease, we advance. Out of the dead ends of poverty, through wilderness of superstition, across barricades of Jim Crowism, we advance. With the peoples of the world, we advance.
And advance we do. Progressive Labor Party continues to hold the torch of communism, learning from both the successes and failures of the old communist movement, while keeping the leadership of Black workers central to our global fight to destroy capitalism and build communism in its ashes.
A world Melvin Tolson likely would be dreaming about after midnight, writing in his basement.
Thank you. We have got a litany of amazing questions that you all have submitted. So I think we're going to try and deal with some of these questions. One of the first questions we want to try to ask, what's the difference between what these historic communists fought for and what PLP fights for? I have to answer that. The difference between what these communists fought for and what PLP fights for is we fight for communist revolution right away. As I stated earlier in the introduction, the period of socialism, fighting for socialism, didn't work. We found out through the experience of the Soviet Union and in China, where workers did a gallant try and change our society, and they thought socialism was going to work. But socialism, Progressive Labor Party maintains, kept important aspects of capitalism that made it impossible for it to change. They kept wages, they kept money, and those things under a communist society will never be able to exist. We want to organize to take state power and get rid of money, because as people know, money is the root of all evil. And I'm not just quoting that from the Bible, it is true. And we cannot, they will not pay us what we are worth. And then when we need money, they can't provide us the housing, the clothes, the education that our class so desperately deserves, and that we're still fighting for. From the 30s to the 20s, we're still fighting for these same things, and it's gotten worse. So that's my attempt to answer that question. We have to go to communism right away and destroy capitalism. Our next question would be, and my son is going to help me because he is in the house with me right now. This next question.
I also wanted to mention that we have some other party members on as well, Kim and Maria. So, yay.
Okay. How can a young person help the Communist Party? Is our next question.
Well, I think young people are invaluable. Hey, what's up? This is Maria, y'all. I think young people are absolutely invaluable. Um, if we think about when we started realizing that this system didn't have the best interests of us, that things were unfair, that some teachers targeted us and we didn't know why. All of those things started when we were young, when we started thinking about the types of things that influenced us. That happened when we were young. So we have to make sure that we're influencing the young people in our lives toward our political outlook, toward communism, toward what we feel is going to really free all working class people. I don't think there's any age that's too young for that. It's how we act in our families. It's even how we could raise our kids. I think kids are very aware of what is fair, of what makes sense, and of what is right. So I can't think of any age that's too young to learn about what we feel is going to really change this system for the better, what we feel needs to be a revolution of this system and why capitalism isn't working and won't work. That's what I think.
Okay, our next question. Thank you, Maria. What's the modern day struggle that POP is part of? And this is for any of the panelists. Huh? Oh my God. Well, I'll start. One of the struggles we're part of is organizing against police terror. The party has been organized, as long as I've been in it, for 38 years. The attacks on Black workers by the police. I remember the first thing I went to in the party is when we went to Atlanta, where the cops, somebody was killing Black children, and we thought it was the cops. We knew it had to be some kind of entity of the cops. And after witnessing January 6th, I don't doubt it one bit. But anyway, the party went down, and we met with teachers and students from Spelman. We went to the community because we had a comrade that lived in Atlanta, and she was fighting racism there as a teacher inside the schools. From that experience until my present day experience, the party has always fought against racist police terror. In New York and Harlem, that has been my reality, my experience, and that has won me definitely closer to the party because we do fight against racist police terror.
Somebody said in the chat that their little 9-year-old is listening to us right now. So people are never too young, and it's never too early to learn about what fighting against this racist, sexist, ableist, terrible capitalist system is all about. I totally agree with that, comrade.
And we're currently involved in this attack on, during the summer, during Black Lives Matter movement and the killing of George Floyd, we were in the streets. We're always in the streets. That's what we do.
Yes, that's what we do. Perfect.
And so now we're involved in the Mohawk case. A lot of young people were attacked by the police, and he's been under house arrest for the last 7 months. And we fight in LA, we fight in Washington, DC, we fight all of these attacks against our class, against these young people that this system disrespects and has absolutely no, what's the word? No passion for. These are our kids, these are our class. And so that's why we fight, and we will keep fighting. Just like parents in a school here in Chicago, where they fought for a library. Why do we have to fight for a library for our kids? But these women organized a sit-in, and with the risk of being arrested and being deported, they did that for their kids because they know our students' needs and what this system has totally decided that they are not going to give an attend to the needs of our class. So those are just some of the few. In LA, New York, we are there, and we are organizing to take state power. We are not fighting to put one politician in over the other. We understand that that has not worked. So, well, around the world, we have done that. In Haiti, in Southeast Asia and Africa, that's the international mission that our party has always upheld to and will always honor. What? Do we have time for one more question? Okay, let's let her rip. Why should folks join Progressive Labor Party? Okay. Felipe?
Because it's awesome.
Felipe Kim.
Remember to unmute yourselves, comrades.
PLP is a fighting organization. I'm not sure if folks can hear me. I don't have a good background, but
we can hear you.
That's what comes to mind to me. That some groups are and some groups ain't. They change their mind, whatever. But the party fights. Period.
Yeah, I think. Can y'all see me? I'm out here. I think that it's very. This has been the biggest source of community that I've had in a long time. Just doing this activism and organizing work, and I feel like with the PLP, there's so many people here to support you and help you whenever you need it, and also help others. Like that's our whole purpose. That's our whole goal, and I really do appreciate that about the PLP. And if you guys can see me now, I am wearing a cow onesie. I did not expect to be on camera, but here I am.
Okay, it's getting close to 2:00 now, and we didn't even scratch the surface of getting to a lot of these amazing questions that you have had. So we will continue this discussion, and we will make a script. I know we can do that, of all these questions, so we can start addressing them, and we'll probably do it over and in our periodical Communist Desafío, Challenge Desafío. This is our sword. This is what we fight the bosses with. These ideas that are unapologetic, uncompromising. They're saying that we are going to fight to take state power away from these bosses that no longer should exist. They have no right to rule our class. So I'd like to invite you to get a copy of this newspaper. And in conclusion, this concludes PLP's 2021 Black and Red celebration. Please join me in thanking everyone via chat who was responsible for putting this event together. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for the skits. Thanks for the creative readings. Thanks our translator and our tech coordinator who brought all of us together in this space, even though because of COVID, we've been apart. I hope the lives of our class sisters and brothers that were highlighted here today will go on to inspire us to become the revolutionaries and to provoke you to find out more about Progressive Labor Party and build the revolutionary movement that our class so desperately needs. We are standing on the shoulders of giants and are continuing their fight, the fight for the international working class, fight for communist revolution, for a communist world, join Progressive Labor Power, power to the working class. Thank you all.